Okay. Evening, everyone. Councillor Dench, I'll be filling in for Mayor Seal tonight, who is away. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Can you please silence any of your electronics? And with that, we'd like you to stand and rise, if you can, for the national anthem.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of its command, car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on God for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on God for thee.
Sorry about that. If Councillor Bonner could give us the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Niagara region is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Haida-Windarunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The City of Port Colborne stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live.
Thank you very much. Proclamations, nothing this evening. Adoption of the agenda, Councillor Bruno and Councillor Bagu, that the agenda dated May 14th, 2024 be confirmed as amended. If any councillor has any questions about the agenda, please raise your hand now. Go ahead.
Through Mr. Chair, do we amend it to put 8.7 up?
I'm sorry?
Item 8.7.
Yeah, I've noted that here.
Oh, is it? Okay, I just wanted to confirm.
8.8.
Was it
8.8, yeah.
Oh, 8.8, okay.
Okay, good enough. We want
8.7 is lodging the bylaw. We want that to be first. Because there's
the 8.7s first?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
all right.
apologies.
You want to do that now?
After the mayor's video and whatnot.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, no problem. So disclosures of interest, Councillor Beauregard and Bodner have both declared a conflict of interest on item 8.8, noise variance, Sherkston Shores, 490 Empire Road, 2024-109. If any other councillors have a conflict of interest they wish to disclose, please raise your hand now. Okay, so thank you. We've got 3 sets of minutes, 7.1, you want me to read the dates on those? On the minutes, you want me to read the dates? Okay, so regular minutes of council, April 23rd, 2024, meeting to consider, April 23rd, 2024, and a joint special council meeting with closed session, April 29th, 2024. I've got Councillor Bruno and Councillor Hoyle seconding that, and that the minutes in items 7.1 through 7.3 be approved as presented. Any councillors has any questions about these 3 minutes, please raise your hands. Thank you. Alrighty.
Call the question,
Yeah.
All in favor?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. If there are any opposed, please raise your hand. Thanks again. The motion is carried. Staff reports. I don't think we have anything tonight. Correspondence items that have been pulled. Okay.
No, so you got 8.5, 8.7, and 8.8 are lifted.
Right.
So you want to approve the rest on consent.
Okay, is that all right with you guys? The rest of those items? Okay. Are we going to pull that up front now? We're going to talk to that 8.7? So I think we're going to move item 8.7 first, so the ladies in hand can give us their presentations. So where we go? We're going to hit this one now.
Regional council report, staff remarks.
Okay, so delegations tonight, we've got Kim Simons, Director, Anchors Away, Support Services Incorporation. We've got Christine Clark-Lafleur, Chief Executive Officer of Port Cares. Judy Cassan with Community Health Worker, Bridges Community Health Center. And last but not least, Jennifer Mason Archer. So I think if we could get Kim up first and come up to the podium, please. Did you want her first? Yeah.
Okay.
State your name,
Just-
sorry, state your name
That's
and
okay.
address, please.
Kim Simons, 59 Clarence Street rear, Port Colborne. All right, so I'm going to try not to read everything, but I'm a little nervous, so I might just read. I'm a business owner in Port Colborne. My agency provides supports to adults with intellectual disabilities in the community. Many nights I go to bed and I feel an overwhelming feeling of guilt. I climb into my nice warm bed, a place I feel safe and comfortable, a place to recharge. Everyone deserves to feel that way. Unfortunately, for the vulnerable people that live in lodging homes, this is not their reality. Many of them climb into a bed that has no sheets, it's covered in stains, and filled with bugs. They have an uncomfortable night ahead of them, itching and wondering if their privacy will be invaded by another resident opening their door through the night. It's not fair, it's not good enough, and we need to protect these vulnerable people. I've personally been in lodging homes in Port Colborne, Fort Erie, Welland, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls. Some are worse than others, but they all have a similar problem in that they fail to provide quality supports and decent living conditions. The rent at these lodging homes is almost all of the monthly allowance that they receive from ODSP, leaving them very little to spend on preferred foods, hygiene products, medications that are not covered, new clothing, the list goes on. For many residents, they don't even know how they got stuck in this situation. The mental health unit at the Niagara Health System often organizes discharges to these lodging homes. There seems to be no concern for them that these homes are unregulated and not overseen by the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Children, Community and Social Services. For the past 11 years, I've been concerned and trying my best to identify residents that have intellectual disabilities and assist them with moving into appropriate ministry-regulated residential housing or into their own apartments with support, a place they can be safe and make their own choices. To date, I've assisted 16 people in leaving lodging homes and moving into appropriate housing. This bylaw won't fix all of the issues in the homes, but it sure will make a difference in some areas. These lodging homes need to be held to a higher standard, inspected, and the vulnerable people that live there need to know that they matter. Here's a list of complaints that I've heard firsthand from the people that live in these homes. Bed bugs, being eaten alive at night. Lice so bad that their head is bleeding and full of scabs. Meals that are mainly rice, potatoes, pasta, very limited meat, almost no fruits or vegetables. No modifications for any dietary needs. A recent example of a dinner served was a plate of French fries with a side of macaroni with butter. Missed meals. If a resident is not home or sleeping at a mealtime, they miss out on that meal, even if they're not home due to an appointment and they will return shortly. Belongings taken away upon admission and put in storage, even though there's room for these items in their bedrooms. When requesting these items back, they're unable to be located. Limiting visitors and support staff, just not allowing support staff and families into the home. Not allowing access to the phone to make personal calls or call emergency services. No privacy. Doors do not lock from the inside, so other residents can walk right in at any time. Stolen personal items. Doors do not lock from the outside. Unclean linens. Unclean washroom facilities. Forcing a person with a physical or developmental disability to share a small bedroom with a resident that has a significant mental health or drug problem. 8 years ago, I supported a man at the emergency room who was stomped repeatedly by his drug-addicted roommate while he was sound asleep. When I went to the hospital, he was covered with blood and bruises. These physical assaults by other residents have little or no follow-up. They have no access to a common room to spend time in and socialize. No encouragement to seek other supportive housing options or local support services. These residents have no opportunity to voice their complaints to the lodging home management or change their circumstances. Over the years, it's been very difficult to support people that live in these homes. Oftentimes, the lodging home staff don't even know all the residents' names, let alone any issues that they may need to be aware of to provide quality supports. There can be one staff in a home with 20 to 30 residents. The homes provide no communication with service agencies and families regarding medications that have not been taken, PRN medications administered, and medications that have been changed or discontinued. Refusing to provide medication documentation when this is really important as we track different behaviors or medical concerns that we need to share with medical professionals. The lodging home staff do not provide feedback on medication side effects that are vital to monitor medication changes and overall health. Residents often need to wait several days to receive a prescription that they were given at urgent care or an emergency room due to the fact that the homes have a contract with a pharmacy that is located out of the Niagara region. Sometimes they own these pharmacies. Sometimes they're as far away as Kitchener. Residents are forbidden from using a local pharmacy for these time-sensitive prescriptions. Bed bugs are a major concern. Support staff and families are nervous that they could bring these pests home. This is isolating the already vulnerable people, as the home is currently under no obligation to do anything about the bugs. I've called Niagara Region Public Health and made complaints on several occasions. Their stance is that bed bugs are not considered a health issue as they don't transmit diseases. In the past few months, I've personally seen bed bugs, not necessarily bed bugs, I've seen bugs jumping off of residents' clothing and bodies. I've talked with several residents that are suffering greatly as a result of the bugs. I've sent emails to the lodging home management with my concerns, but have never received a response. Bylaw currently has very little ability to investigate any concerns brought forward. People are paying a minimum of $1,200 a month for a shared room, and at any time they can be served with an N3. Notice to increase rent or charges for care and meals. There is no limit what they can charge. They do not need to follow the landlord-tenant guidelines for increases if they disguise this increase for care and meals and not rent. The care and meals do not seem to improve, but the cost is constantly being increased. This ability to change the amount owing ensures that any increases to ODSP do not go to the resident, but go directly to the lodging home operators. These homes are also known to become trustees for people receiving assistance and give out allowances. They are not required to keep records of this money and provide a ledger of any kind. A few months ago, my agency assisted a woman with moving out and into appropriate housing. Her entire body was covered in infected sores from bed bug bites. Her head was shaved bald and covered in scabs. This woman had to leave her belongings behind. We had to have her transported by taxi to the YMCA so that she could shower and throw out her clothing and shoes. She changed into new clothing we purchased her so that she could move without bringing the bugs with her. I feel some relief and accomplishment that this woman is now in a nice home, but there's still so many people in these homes just waiting for someone to come and help them. In April 2023, we were supporting a young woman who died while living in a lodging home here in Port Colborne. Her name is Allison, and she was amazing. Unfortunately, we did not assist her quickly enough. I will let her mother, Jennifer, speak to the terrible experiences that led to Allison's untimely death, as she is here today advocating for change in her daughter's memory. Many people in these homes don't have outside supports to help advocate for them and are unable to advocate for themselves. These homes make it difficult for agencies and families to advocate and provide supports, looking at us like a nuisance and focusing on money instead of human beings. I fully support this bylaw and think it's necessary that these homes be forced to be accountable and the conditions for the conditions and supports they provide. I'm hopeful that Port Colborne will pass this bylaw and that other municipalities will follow suit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Payette.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. To Kim, thank you, Kim. Couple questions. Do you actually work for some sort of support group?
So I run an agency in Port Colborne that does outreach and community supports for people with disabilities.
Okay.
With
Okay.
intellectual, developmental, physical disabilities.
Is it a government?
Nope,
thing, or
it's a private business.
Private. Okay. Good. Okay. And I do agree with your concerns there. It's been going on for quite a while. And past council, Councillor Kaliev and another lady there. She moved to Calgary now. I keep in contact with her. She is quite concerned still. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Beauregard.
Thank you through you, Deputy Mayor, to Kim. Thank you for your comments, and I see that you got emotional and
I wasn't supposed to.
How important this is to you and the community. So you have experience with these sort of lodging facilities. Which ones have you had personal experience with in the city of Port Colborne?
In the city of Port Colborne, there's only one currently that is open, and I've been in there. The past was probably about 3 months ago, was the last time that I was in there. There was a couple other that were open, and I was also in them. I've been in all the boarding homes that I could get into.
Okay. And just off that, would you say the conditions are pretty much consistent amongst them all that in your experience?
There's some that are worse than others. And if I had to pick the best one, it is not the one here in Port Colborne. Yes. There's some that are very, very bad. There's some in St. Catharines that are very, very concerning and scary. But I went in there as well. I kind of make it my mission to go in and see what I can see.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you. Did I push this then?
Yep, if you don't mind. Thank you. Our next speaker will be Christine Clark-Lafleur, Chief Executive Officer of Port Cares. come on up there and push the red button. I think you know how it works.
Okay, thank you very much. Christine Clark-Leffler, Chief Executive Officer for Port Cares. I'll give my address as 92 Charlotte Street, seeing I spend more time there than I do at home. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you, Kim, for your very compassionate and responsive comments. I think you're going to hear, again, the experiences of individuals in the community and families, and sadly there are many experiences. And I think today's kind of like a Clint Eastwood movie for me. We've had the incredible good today, and I commend the City of Port Colborne for all your efforts on the major announcement today. But what we're speaking about right now is the other end of the story, and that's the bad and the ugly. I want to focus on the draft bylaw as it's been circulated and the CAO's report. I really was struck by the commentary that this is a benefit to residents of these homes and to the community as a whole. I really want to pepper that statements by saying it is. It's not just about the residents who sadly end up in these places, but it is the community as a whole. So I want to commend the City of Port Colborne for having the strength, the shoulders, the tenacity, and the grit to take this on. Where other levels of government have failed or have ignored or really just, they just don't care. So I think that's an incredible, it's been incredible that the city has taken this on, and I really want to express my personal gratitude and the gratitude of Port Cares for your efforts. It hasn't been easy. It is, but the tenacious approach and the comprehensive approach is to be saluted. I think that, again, building on the comments previous, this is a great start. And I'm in looking at the bylaw, I just want to, I want to just pepper on a couple of sections. Section 1.1, your purpose. Your purpose is very clear, concise, and I think it will serve the issues that we struggle with very well. Section 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, yes, yes, and yes. The sections under Section 3 really drive accountability. Now, accountability should not be really considered a punitive thing. It should be something we all strive for. But I think in the context of what we've been dealing with in this community, you need very, very clear accountability driven to drive out the bad actors. And as you've heard, and as you well know, there are, we tend to have to really focus on the bad actors because the exploitation that has gone on and continues to go on is beyond the pale. It's beyond, what you would even consider as something that happens in humanity in a first world country. I want to skip over to section 6.72, the $5 million limit for personal injury and property damage as the liability threshold. When you think about some of these homes, they may have 20, 25, residents or tenants. I struggle to say residents, but they may have people, that number of people living there. Again, if you want to really consider how to sort the corporate citizens who provide lodging services from the bad actors, I would encourage the city to consider either a graduated threshold for liability based on the numbers of beds or rooms. That's one heck of a good way to shake out those who are just there to exploit. And again, graduated liability coverage can really get rid of the people that you really want to be rid of who take advantage of others in this sector. I'm just going to skip over to, I think you've done a really good job of outlining what the food requirements are, and I think that's will really be interesting to see in the future once, again, should council move to endorse this bylaw. what impact is there, because it's abysmal. It's terrible right now. Like Ms. Simons, I was in one of the homes just a month ago. My husband and I went in to take a holiday dinner, and when you have 60-year-old men running to you to get the food and eating with their hands because they haven't had any food all day, and you're just thinking that it's mind-blowing when somebody is that hungry, is that vulnerable, that they have to eat the food with their hands because they haven't eaten. You've got a huge problem, and this is completely and utterly wrong. And so kudos on what's been outlined in the bylaw with respect to the expectations around food quality, food delivery, and the timing. The one section that I was a little, I wanted to point out, because there's a bit of contradiction, is 13.3 in terms of when there's a loss of housing for one or more of the lodgers, that we notify the region of Niagara. So what happens in that case is that eviction prevention services get dispatched. Those, currently eviction prevention services in Port Colborne are delivered by Port Cares. I'm really troubled that I would have to send my staff in to advocate for someone to have to, a resident to stay in some of these places because it's an eviction prevention intention. So I'm not sure if we can take another look at 13.3, so we're not, sort of working at counter purposes across two levels of government, that being local and regional. But again, I appreciate everything that the city is doing to wrestle this monster, because it is a monster, to the ground. It's been a monster that's been long practicing in this community and in all communities, but I think where there's a will, there certainly has been a way, and I think you've done a tremendously effective job of developing a comprehensive approach to dealing with this situation. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to this matter, and I'd gladly take any questions.
Anybody? Thanks, Christine.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so our next presenter tonight would be Judy Cassan, Community Health Worker, Bridges Community Health Center. Buttons on, just give us
Pardon me?
buttons on, so just give us your name and address, please.
Is it on? Okay. Judy, 380 Elm Street, Community Health Center. Okay, here we go. So, okay. So I am here tonight as part of my ongoing support and advocacy for hundreds of individuals who have suffered emotionally, spiritually, physically, and financially under the authority of unregulated homes here in Port Colborne. 3 homes in particular over the past 16 years. There was a home in Ward 1, one in Ward 2, and one in Ward 3 over the last 16 years. And as Kim cited, there's one open now. So a bit of history here. In 2008, while I was employed at Port Cares and Client Services, was when I was first alerted to issues presenting from clients at these homes. I vividly recall the first client who came for help. He had moved into the home on Fraser Street. He was a recipient of ODSP, Ontario Disability Support Program, at the time. He reported the staff at the home controlled all his monies from his check. So to clarify, on ODSP checks, they're categorized, so they have shelter, basic needs, all the checks, and then some clients have different categories, which would be like a special diet, incontinence supplies, diabetic, transportation to medical, etc. So this gentleman had a category for incontinence supplies on his check. The money was used at a local pharmacy before he moved there, and he was able to pick up his monthly supplies from the pharmacy. He stated he had spoke to the staff about the issue and they would not give him the money or the supplies. At this time, I set up an appointment to speak with staff to resolve the matter. The owner, another staff, and myself met at the Fraser Street home, and we had a long conversation that day. And let's just say that particular issue was the first of hundreds of issues to follow over the years that did not get resolved. The people's human rights were being violated. It became very clear in that meeting the intent of the owner. The focus was clearly financial, with absolutely no regard to the people or their needs. As a result of that encounter, there was no question that something had to be done to support the vulnerable population in these homes. It was just wrong on too many levels. Basic rights were being violated, and that was 2008. In the years that ensued, the issues ranged from medical distribution, lack of food, lack of nutritional food, financial abuse, neglect, bullying, threatening, being denied medical care, being denied human rights, being denied proper supports, withholding medication, and randomly moving the clients from one building to another or from one community to another. I spoke to anyone who would listen and was hopeful I would get some direction. And I did get direction, because everyone I spoke to advised me they couldn't help because there was no bylaw or regulation in place for them to work off of, and suggested I speak to someone else. So I started out here at City Hall, where I was told that they just deal with brick and mortar. So from there I went to the region of Niagara, homelessness managers, public health, property standards, Niagara North Legal, Justice Niagara Legal Clinic, other frontline workers from Canadian Mental Health, Niagara Regional Mental Health, and I went anywhere and spoke to anyone. And at that time, I was being quite vocal in my concerns with examples and incidences occurring in the homes. And my observation back then was I quickly was learning the nature in which the facilities owners and staff had a dealt with any potential threat to him or his business. And my concern was he would bring legal charges against me if I didn't shut up. So that is how I conducted. So I sought. That's how he conducted himself and his staff with clients: bullying, threatening, and controlling. I did seek legal advice and was advised I could not be charged with slander if I only spoke the truth. So I carried on with the truth to, again, whoever would listen and hopefully find resolution to this inhumane living conditions. The answer was always the same. The bottom line was the homes do not fall under any regulated housing bylaw. The owners of the residents are not accountable to anyone for anything, of course, other than fire codes. I was so very naive to government process 16 years ago, and that process has caused innocent people their lives. People that myself and many other frontline workers in the region had the privilege of knowing, these clients. The lack of process and accountability is why many have died, and I'm not being dramatic. That's the truth. I will give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. When an individual first became a resident at the home, immediately all ties with the client's regular pharmacy are cut. They have no choice or say in the matter, even though they have been connected to the local pharmacy for many years. All prescriptions and accounts with ODSP and government programs were sent to a pharmacy in Hamilton from all three homes. I wrote down here, red flag, anyone? Anyways, hence the gentleman before that I had spoke to had no control over how he was going to get his incontinence supplies, as he did for years at his local pharmacy. So medication was delivered from Hamilton to Port on Thursdays. Next problem. A client was diagnosed, was diagnosed with a urinary tract infection and prescribed penicillin to start that day. It just so happens it was a Friday, so we're out of luck because the script had to go to Hamilton first, and then the medication was going to be delivered the following Thursday. If I had not been privy to this situation, this one very individual day, she would not have received the medication she was prescribed to start until the following Thursday, 7 days later. Thankfully, after explaining the situation to the pharmacist, and somehow I got my hands on the script, we were able to resolve that situation. The thought is that no one would ever have known or been accountable for that lovely lady not getting her medication as prescribed. That is just one example of many that I knew regarding medication. So how many more of those scenarios over the many, many years has it happened where no one will ever know what happened? Another time, a local pharmacist called me with concerns about one of his customers. He explained the gentleman had been with him over a year and that his diabetes was severe. In order for him to know how much insulin to provide, frequent urine samples needed to be provided. He had spoken to the management at the home to explain the complexity of prescribing the medication and that doses fluctuated regularly. The pharmacist explained to the staff this could mean life or death for this individual. The home pulled the prescription from Port Colborne to Hamilton without allowing the client to make that decision. The pharmacist, like myself, had no legal right to stop the process. Who were we supposed to tell? Staff, with absolutely no regard for the person or the situation they treated that man like he was a statistic. There was a financial gain for all the prescriptions to be sent to Hamilton. Yeah, so the gentleman passed away a few months after that. So who's accountable to that? As a worker, as a pharmacist, you feel accountable. My goal for many years was to support the best I could, as many as I could. Police services and fire department were starting to frequent the homes for a variety of reasons, and it was at that point I felt I had the support of agencies in the town with the same heartfelt concerns and moral obligation that I felt. So just to be clear, I want to be clear that this is not about me. I'm not by any means the only person who has concerns, voiced concerns, taken food and sundries to the homes, and try to support these people. There have been many frontline workers and agencies in the entire region that have done what I'm trying to do and what Kim has tried to do and we've all been trying to do. Over the years, we have received many phone calls from church congregations, community members, and frontline workers. They have reached out to voice their concern and asked what they can do to help in any way. People have prepared holiday meals, summer treats, fruit, vegetables, and taking clothing to the residents. These homes are not a secret to many, many caring Port Colborne citizens who are also desperate for changes. I found myself in weekly conversations and conflict with office staff who was in Welland at the time, and with some of the staff in the houses. In the early years, the staff in the homes who did the cooking and cleaning and medication distribution were quite pleasant, and they too were dumbfounded at the way homes were kept, the lack of food, the lack of care and supports for the residents. Office staff and management were bullying their frontline workers as well, I was told. In 2014, one of the concerned home workers asked the office staff in Welland for more food for the residents. She was given 8 links of sausage and 11 pounds of potatoes to prepare the dinner for 19 residences. 8 linked sausage and 11 pounds of potatoes. She was confronted by management and was fired shortly after and explained to me her other concerns, which I quickly documented. Neglect of residents, locking residents in their rooms, nutritional content of food, amount of food provided to residents, concerns around residents struggling to access their own monies. That was right from the worker there. At one point, when I was actively involved in advocating for clients, I was advised by a worker that staff in all 3 homes that were open at the time in Port Colborne here were told that if I went into the homes, they were to ask me to leave, and if I didn't leave, they were to call 911. Again, I consulted with a lawyer to determine what my legal rights were. I went to Lakeside Terrace one day, was asked if you're Judy, and advised if I didn't leave, she was calling 911. I proceeded to the client's room as scheduled. After our meeting, I was heading down the stairs to go to my car, only to be greeted by 4 Niagara Regional Police officers at the bottom of the stairs. Of course, the comment was, "This is 911." Of course, nothing came of it, except again, proof the manager and the owner of the homes get to be bullied. The amount of time and effort both fire and police have spent in these 3 homes over the past 16 years has to be countless. Fast forward. By now, after 6 years of frontline workers and several agencies from across the region to their managers, advocating, dealing with, and searching for answers to support people stuck in these homes across the region, higher up listened. So there's, right here, I have it. On Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014, a follow-up meeting was held at the regional headquarters. And the meeting was called Key Stakeholders Assisting Vulnerable Adults, Wednesday, April 23rd, 2014. So the likes of these people are Adrienne Jugley, who at the time was Director of Clinical Services. I believe she's Commissioner now. There was a social worker from Niagara Regional Mental Health. Tara Lee from Bridges was there. Chris Scotland from the Staff Sergeant from Niagara Regional Police was there. Public Guardian and Trustee, Mike Bendia Fire. Legal Counsel for the Region of Niagara. Associate Medical Officer of Health. And Advocacy Center for the Elders in Toronto, just to name a few. So from this meeting, so people and agencies in the region with clout and knowledge and power paid attention to not just myself, to all of us in the region that were frontline workers in this committee. So they had a working committee was formed from this meeting here. And I sat on the working committee along with members from each municipality, Niagara Falls, St. Catharines, Welland, Port. There were bylaw officers, fire departments, CAOs, community legal services, the region of Niagara management, such as housing and homelessness, just to name a few, sat on there. And after many years and many meetings at regional headquarters and a lot of effort and time by a lot of people, the document being discussed this evening was written. Fires such as Mike Bendia, Tom Cartwright, Scott Lawson, and also Neil Schoen, who was a paralegal at the time, at the legal clinic at the time, were instrumental in this document. Pardon? Yep. So it's time in Port Colborne that we get some control back from the owner and others like him who will surely find their way here as you all allow unregulated homes to continue. I am not sure where else it would I'm not sure what else it would take for you to grasp the magnitude of this ongoing disgusting allowance that continues in our community. All the hard work has been done. Folks have lost their lives, families have lost loved ones, folks are being abused. The price has been paid, the work has been done. No more discussion is required by anyone, in particular from the owner. Thank you.
Any questions for the presenter? Go ahead.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the presenter. In your experience, how does one end up in one of these facilities? Or these lodging houses, I should say.
Well, when he first started, there was all kinds of lovely brochures and so on that he would put out that for people who were vulnerable, that wouldn't find any place else to live, who would end up in a shelter, who would be homeless, who they didn't have anybody to advocate, they didn't have family, they didn't have that. So we had residents at one time coming from Oshawa, from homeless shelters, in which I had to put him in a taxi and send him back because we don't have wheelchair accessible at the time. Even for the Niagara region, he had some addiction issues and he couldn't get into rehab because there was no, right? It just goes on and on. They come from hospitals, they come from prisons, they come from all over the place.
Okay. And I guess along the same line, how freely are they able to, like how easily are they able to leave the facility if they wanted to? Leave the lodging
Permanently?
Yeah, if they wanted to.
Okay, right away I have one example. I had a call from years ago from one of the residents and they said, you got to come here. This lady wants to leave and they won't let her leave. I had to get the police involved because they wouldn't give her medication because it was in Hamilton. So we had to call the police and the police came and she said, I don't want to stay here. I want to go back to St. Catharines, but they're not giving me my money. They're not giving me my clothing and they're not giving me my medication. So we had to get the police to come and say, you have to, she has a right to leave. So we waited for her medication and she left that day.
All right, thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Hi, Judy.
Mark?
You probably would know this, but for myself, the staff person that is present, I guess somebody's there 24 hours a day, I don't know, I'm just guessing. What qualifications do they have? Are there any qualifications mandatory that they have to have in order to monitor and take care of these people? Is there any regulations?
No.
At all?
No. The way they get around distributing medication, because some of them are or were PSWs, some of them were people, God love them, they just couldn't get a job, so they go there and they work for them. They have a reason and excuse for every sort of legality. So they're not licensed to distribute medication. So they claim that they have all the medication blistered and brought from Hamilton, and then they have it under a lock and key. And then when it's medication time, they allow them to get their medication if they choose to get it. Is how it's worded in their brochure. So that means that they're covering themselves to say they're not telling people to take their meds. They're not demanding people with psychiatric medications that need to be taken daily. They legally can't, so they legally they make a little statement in their brochure about it that they make it available to the clients, right? So there's lots of gray.
To you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I think I understand cutting the corners over there. Thank you, Judy.
Go ahead, Councilor Berger.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Thank you, Judy. And some of the things that I've heard so far from the three presenters is I'm wondering if you have seen good examples through your years or through your colleagues of homes that can work. I guess I'm looking at this as we have this problem, we can regulate them, but are we empowered or have the knowledge, or will our bylaw, for those of you that can look at this, make sure that we have all these things in there? I'm going to get off onto a little tangent here because I don't know who can answer this question, but I looked at the prescription thing. So how do you get rid of that? Do you have to hire an RPN or somebody that can do the prescription handout? So, like, a lot of the things that I'm hearing are horror stories, but I want to find out how our bylaw can force people to do things. And maybe you can't have a perfect bylaw, but I always like to look at, are there best practices out there that lodging homes have used that could underpin our bylaw? In other words, if you look at who's doing it right, and you make all those things the condition if you do wrong, you may have built a better bylaw, a better mousetrap. So are there examples out there that we could be looking at that would help us build a stronger bylaw? Because I'm worried there's lots of things that a staff member, and I'll get to that when we talk to Sherry, that perhaps aren't equipped to say, this is a health concern, and I'm calling you out on it. Or on the prescription in Hamilton, that they'll get, how do they drill down and get that story and then enforce it? So
How does who do that? The home?
Well, if the home's not doing it, we have to find out, but then I know that's an enforcement issue. But have you seen the draft bylaw?
Have I seen this draft bylaw?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
And is there things, are there things that aren't there that should be? And are there things there that don't address a prescription that's 7 days old, or lice, or bed bugs?
I think that this document has been viewed by lots of levels, has it not, Scott? Yeah. And I think that it's been looked at from a frontline worker perspective, and I think it's been looked at by levels all the way up, whether it's management at housing or wherever it is. There are bylaws that were put in Hamilton and St. Mary's that stopped dead this sort of unregulated homes. And they were put in place because there was a fire, people found out, the bylaw was made, and that was the end of it. Those owners leave. So, I mean, to refer to other bylaws that are already in place would be Hamilton, St. Thomas. I think Scott's aware of a few other ones that would, if you want to redo and compare, if that's what you mean, I'm not really understanding.
I think through the acting mayor to Councillor Bruno, and I understand the question, it was directed to the delegate and not to staff, but this, there's been some nice comments here about the work the city's doing and the work to get this here. I want to be clear with council, I did not write this bylaw, I wrote the staff report, but this bylaw is the product of 10, and that's the first time I've heard that date, but I know Mike Bendia was at those meetings, the product of 10 years of work by many, many smart people, like copious amounts of work by Mike Bendia, dedicated work by our former deputy chief. Great work by Jeff Sinclair from Regional Public Health. It's had legal review. It's been reviewed by the members of our social determinants of health. It's been shared with other municipalities and CAOs and had legal review from their lawyers. One of the reasons it's taken 10 years is because it's been It didn't dive.
Well, 2019.
We went deep into it. I'm not saying it's the best bylaw in Ontario. I don't know how it stacks up. Like, I know Hamilton's bylaw. I know other jurisdictions. But I think staff's position is that this is a starting off point. We can come back with an amendment. If we find a loophole that needs to be closed, we can close it. The bylaw's here for the protection of people who need protection from some level of government. My suggestion is that the province should be in this area, regulatory area. My second best choice, and I don't say this to shirk responsibility, I say this because who is best equipped to administer these services? The second best choice is the region. Hamilton has it. Hamilton is a region and a city at the same time because it's a single tier. I think, and my staff report recommendation here is that we lobby the region to take this on and give consistency across jurisdictions and make sure an operator doesn't lose a license in one jurisdiction and open in another jurisdiction. So I would suggest legal review. There is wording about prescriptions. For example, it says that they must have a policy if they're going to operate in this area. We'll see the policy, but we might not be able to say, 10% in 4 days and certain requirements on that policy. But when we find an area we can improve, we can strengthen our bylaw. And again, one bylaw for all of Niagara or one provincial act like MPP Jeff Birch tried a few years ago would probably be an even better framework.
Yeah, and Cindy Forrester did that before, right. Before COVID. Yeah. And to speak to that, the pharmaceutical, if the clients were given the authority to keep their pharmacies in town where they're used to, that solves all kinds of the pharmacy problems. Just giving them their human rights to have their pharmacy where they want it. Like that resolves all of that 7-day thing. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Okay, one more speaker tonight. We've got Jennifer Mason Archer. She wants to come up. The little red button's on, so you're good to go. So just give us your name and address, and away you go.
My name's Jennifer Mason Archer. I'm at 59 Clarence Street, Port Colborne. I'm here to speak of my personal experiences as well as my daughter's personal experiences at Niagara Supportive Living Homes. First was a viewing in the Welland home in 2015. The rooms were so small, only a single bed would fit, and it was as though you were in a sauna, it was so hot. The common room was dark and had a very foul odor. The staff I spoke to on duty, one, had very broken English. It was very difficult to communicate. On my arrival at this home, there was a man in his 20s screaming delusional thoughts and suicidal talking on the property. It was suggested that my daughter reside there after leaving KMH Hospital. Our next experience was in a home in Crystal Beach in 2019. Had such a bad odor, I believe, coming from the pipes. 2 clients smelled badly of urine constantly, staff not trained, Wi-Fi not working in the bedroom, stealing, theft constantly as there was no option to lock door, screen door in their bedroom torn out, never repaired, no curtain, I bought one and installed, filthy washrooms, bedroom was horrible, hot in summer, and entire house incredibly cold through the winter. My daughter's brother went once to visit and wouldn't go inside the building again due to the odor, and very saddened by the fact that any of the clients had to live this way. The clients, one of the rooms had no heat at all, and that client had to sleep in the common area for a couple of weeks. I was offered work there, no experience necessary. Pay offered was $140 for 24 hours. Responsibilities there were to make, serve meals, hand out medication, minor cleaning duties of the common area. Rest of time, I was to do nothing for the clients, hence the low pay. Constant staff changing, had to provide all toiletries, even had to buy her own ketchup because she enjoyed ketchup. It wasn't provided for any of her meals. It was a very chaotic, violent, dark, sad, smelly, dreary, unmaintained place of residence. For some time, my daughter's ACT team, that was her mental health support team, they would not enter the building or go to the residents to support her due to safety reasons. It was dangerous. She was not given their support at all at that time, only by phone. My daughter could not make nor receive phone calls, only between the time of 5:30 and 6:30. Often there would be no answer when I called. Laundry day, it was her responsibility to remember her laundry day. No mention or reminder, it wasn't folded, there was no assistance in putting away, no support in organizing anything. She dealt with head lice, and then next was our move in June 2022 to 23 in a Niagara supportive home right here in Port Colborne. Allison was accepted. It was during COVID with her move-in. I had all my vaccines and a negative COVID test. I was told I could not enter the building. With much persistence, I was able. But they were not willing to let me go in and help my daughter make her bed, put away her clothes, be with her to support her during a new move to a new residence. She was unsure and full of fear and anxiety. In the end, I was able to assist her. The entire time that my daughter lived at this residence, I was told I nor anybody else was allowed in the building for any reason. This was enforced during COVID. It was also enforced when there were no COVID restrictions whatsoever. This means I couldn't visit comfortably with my daughter offering any support, such as tidying her room. Staff did not offer any support in this area. I'm sure my daughter slept without sheets. She in later months began bedwetting. There was no support in this. I can only imagine that the next resident would have been sleeping on that very same mattress. Her bedroom, I am told, was filthy. Her bathroom disgusting, which she shared with another resident. She shared a room. She had to pay the same amount from her disability as a client would have to spend if she had a room on her own. So it was the same fee. My daughter, Allison's entire time living at this home, the common room was blocked off, could not be accessed. Bed bugs were worse there, I was told, than anywhere else in the building. They were throughout the building. I never saw protein except scarce amount blended in a dinner once or twice. Never fresh vegetables, never fresh fruit. I bought peaches for everyone residing there. I had to hand them in and it was given to the residents for their snack, and they did not provide that snack that day. I sent my daughter home with homemade turkey soup, made loaded with fresh vegetables and turkey. They threw it out, stating that my daughter could not keep it. I paid out front 6 months of Wi-Fi for Allison to be able to watch TV in her room. She had service for 8 weeks, then it didn't work, so that meant no Wi-Fi service, no common room, no entertainment. She later got a mini fridge for her room, and she was charged, I believe, $15 or $20 simply to have the small TV mini fridge plugged in. My daughter Allison was very musical. I bought her a keyboard, a small mic, and a small 5-watt amp so that she could have that as a type of music therapy. She wasn't allowed to even open it. It was not allowed to, she couldn't play it anywhere within the house. Had a space set up in her closet. The keyboard would have fit nicely there. The box is never opened. She was in singing lessons, so it would have been a very nice addition for her to have something to do at this home. There were no activities ever offered in any of the either home, no entertainment. I received an anonymous call that my daughter had been assaulted. The person stated that she had been bullied and constantly treated poorly by many residents at the building here in Port Colborne. She had been hit in the head. The house didn't even call me to inform me. I had learned of it by an anonymous call. So I wasn't able, I did end up, because of the call, I was able to go and check on her. Allison was not allowed to call 911. This rule had been put on way probably a week or 2 weeks into her moving into the house. She wasn't allowed to ask any resident to borrow their phone either to make a 911 call under any circumstances. She was admitted to St. Catherine's Hospital twice, once in the summer and then again in December with hypodremia. The first time through the morning and later through the day, she was confused, very disoriented. She didn't know where she was, her name. And then later in the day, after hours of her in this condition, they called 911. It was because she lost her bowels, and then they made the call. Then next 911 call was in December. She had the exact same symptoms. It had gone on for hours, and then later after hours, they made the 911 call. She had then vomited and lost her bowels in the hallway. Sent by ambulance for a 4-day recovery at the hospital. On Sunday, early April, I got a call from the hospital here in Welland, or there in Welland. I arrived to find my daughter on life support. She had been not herself. She had the exact same symptoms from the 2 previous calls while living at the house. So they called about 11:30 in the morning, and then she had these symptoms from probably 8 o'clock in the morning on. Left her, didn't leave her, but didn't do anything about it. She absolutely collapsed, and staff saw her. She was on the floor, unconscious, unresponsive. He was able to, get her. She became responsive. He called 911. She was able to walk into the ambulance, and from Port Colborne at her residence here to Welland, she became unresponsive in the ambulance. She then probably like 3 hours later, she was put on life support. Only a week before, I had gone and spoken to staff. I had put a paper together with instructions as to any signs and symptoms Allison would have needed help. I had my phone number, phone number there. It was on the inside of the door at the kitchen where all staff came in and out. I got no phone call when they called 911, so she, was unresponsive, and then later on life support. They never called me. She was in the hospital on life support for probably, I think, a week or some time anyway. They never called at any point. And I never told them that what was going on, that she had passed until, because it was a bit of a process in fear that her room would be raided, her music equipment would be stolen. So it's absolutely horrifying that anyone has to, if not for the neglect, Allison would be here today. It's horrifying that anyone has to live in such conditions. This bill should be passed. As a community, we must recognize how appalling it is for anyone to live in these homes. My daughter had her whole life ahead of her, and it was taken by neglect and very unnecessary. She was a warm, loving, generous, and funny, heart of gold, and with her difficulties, believed the best in people. Her life would have been saved had she been in a decent home with some proper care. Can't even imagine. My daughter had a lot of support. I can't even imagine what it's like for so many residents who have absolutely no support, no friends, no community support. And thanks for listening. Here's a picture of her.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the councilors? Okay. Okay, thanks so much for that, Jennifer. Can you get the flag? Thanks. No further questions from anybody? Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Through you to Ms. Hanson, thank you for all the effort into this and to put this together. I was wondering, I noticed that in the bylaw, it talks about Provincial Offences Acts and things like that, and I was wondering if that's, can that be put into something like AMPs? Are there, the fines, are they dictated by a progressive fine system? I guess what I really want to see is some really tough fines and enforcement. And I worry about, with provincial offenses, the courts taking too long to do. So why don't I just start with the issue of penalties?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bruno. We have the option of doing both, and both are in there with regards to the Provincial Offences Court and the non-parking AMPS penalty system. Both of those systems will be in there. The court one will be through a laying in information, a Part 3 to go to court, while the AMPS, so that we can just put it onto taxes with regards to any fines that are issued. Those fines have not been established as of yet because we can't have it punitive in nature, so we have to regulate and set out the licensing fee first. Then I will be working with the clerks on that, setting out those fees, then establishing all of the short form wording for each prohibited section, then establishing a non-parking tier fining, so similar to what we do in all the other bylaws. If the first tier is at 1,000, it gets doubled to 2,000, and it gets doubled to 3,000 or 4,000 when you go to, so we double each tier and we go to 3 tiers. I'm looking at approximately the same that we did for the vacant building registry, which is approximately a $3,000 licensing fee, and then those fines would be in that ballpark as well, making sure that it's more of a amount that is not just a small amount that is not going to be an issue for the owner to provide.
Great. I mean, my worry was that, you know, it's the old adage that you pay the fine and you up all the residents' fees, and that's how you pay for it, and we really don't get enforcement. I'm not sure who this question is for. I really commend city staff and all of you folks for taking the lead on this. It looks like with the region not just volunteering to uptake, that somebody's got to go first, and I'm proud that we're going first. And so I want to make this as, you know, obviously I'm sure you all do, sort of the poster child of how to do it, so that if there is hopefully an upload that'll be the starting point as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just wondering in terms of timelines on all of that, the fines and all that you have to put in place. Could you give an estimate, Sherry?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Council Bruno, once we finalize the final review of the bylaw with tweaking it from the public comments, we're looking at having everything ready at the end of June, at the latest probably early July, to finalize everything, the final bylaw, the licensing fees, and the non-parking app fines.
Great, thank you. Well done.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I've got a few questions. I probably should ask the first one earlier. How many residents are at this boarding house, I guess you call it, at one time? Is it? Yeah.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bagu, it's approximately 28 residents in that area.
Okay, thank you. Just the definition of a boarding house, like, I'm thinking of another instance where there's a 2-story house, owner of family lives on the 2nd story. The main story has 3 apartments, 3 bedrooms, shared bathroom, shared kitchen. Is that considered a boarding house by our definition, or is that just some sort of weird apartment arrangement?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bagu, I couldn't tell you. It's through the licensing, and the licensing would have established as either a bed and breakfast, a boarding house, or a rooming house. Also, zoning would be able to determine whether or not it is in those categories, or if a group home. But if you gave me the address offline, that we could look into it and resolve that issue sooner than later.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'll follow up on that this week. Thanks. I guess my next question is to the CAO. With the plans of this, we're going to give it to all the CEOs of each municipality and hopefully shame the region into uploading it. If it doesn't happen, is there a potential of having a shared service with another community to have this bylaw?
Sure, through your worship to Councillor Bagu, and I do, since I'm back on the microphone, I'm going to take a liberty here. I pointed out some staff. The risk of making a list is you always forget someone. Sherry Hansen did tons and tons of work on this over the years. Diana did some great work on the clean copy that finally got before council. Last term of council, as you mentioned, Councillor Kalalev, Councillor Demray, and Councillor Beauregard advocated for this to come forward. So sorry I didn't mention you the first time around, Sherry. It's a great question. One of the enforcement, so we need to have a license bylaw in order to get enforcement. And enforcement can be chief building official, fire inspector, or fire prevention officer. It can be a bylaw officer. It can even be a regional employee at community services, even if it's a city bylaw. This bylaw can be a foot in the door for any agency that sort of has an enforcement role, as long as it's regulated in the bylaw. We can definitely share services, and we plan to share services with the region, upper tier, lower tier, but each municipality will have to have their own bylaw, the same as we have a property standards bylaw and our neighbors Fort Erie have a property standards bylaw. As long as they pass a bylaw of their own, and it could have their own wording, it doesn't have to have the exact same wording as us, then we can cross boundaries with anyone who's appointed as an officer. So for example, the Niagara fire coordinators, there's 4 fire coordinators in Niagara, the community services workers. I know Angela Applebaum at the region is a licensing officer. If there was regional licensing, he and his staff would have some authority, and I'm not sure if Sherry knows of any others.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Sherry. Sherry, a lot of work's gone into this. I'm sure we got it as right as we could. Someone else had mentioned that if we have wording wrong or something that we've missed, we can amend this bylaw. How long does that take, the amendment?
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Bodnar, amendments, as we do, we will review it, see it, put it through. It could be for the next council meeting, a meeting after. An amendment is very easy to do with regards to once we clarify things. But just like any bylaw that we have, lot maintenance, for example, we've had 3 of them. We let them go through the process. We see what the tweaks are that we can make, things that we can tighten up, and any loopholes, and then we either rewrite the bylaw in whole so that there's not so many amendments, basically leaving the same bylaw but putting all the amendments in, so basically a consolidated bylaw, and having everything put through again. But if we missed one section in here and it was noted, we could have an amendment through that to the following meeting. It wouldn't be an issue.
Good, because
Through the acting mayor, I'll just add one thing if I may. Some municipal legislation requires a public meeting before we change a bylaw. It allows public input. Think, for example, development charges, planning act. There might be others, building fees. We don't require public notice for this, but as a show of good faith, we reached out to the operators. Of course, we know that there's only one in Port Colborne today. There have been others in the past, and this operator has had other locations in the past. We reached out and offered a chance to comment, and we were told so we've chosen to recommend council pass the bylaw in this case at a subsequent meeting in the staff report, May 28th. The operator has said that they will submit some comments to bylaw. Bylaw will review those comments and then see if there's validity there or not. It is possible that some future state of the bylaw is impacted by the advice, but it's also possible that everything is already covered in the bylaw and we don't need to make those changes. So the bylaw that you see before you on May 28th is most likely going to be the bylaw that's before you today. But these comments that we've received today could lead to some modified form of the bylaw then. And then I guess to add to the answer that you have here, there's no requirement for a public meeting for future amendments.
Councillor Beauregard.
Can I just follow up with one other thing? I'm glad to hear that it isn't a tremendous amount of time, because what we heard here tonight, I think all of us would like to have this passed in 5 minutes, right? But understanding that we have certain obligations to go through. So great to hear that if we didn't get it exactly right, we will. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Beauregard.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. One of the presenters brought up a concern regarding provision 13.1 and 13.3. Maybe through you to Mr. Louie. Were you able to provide any comments on maybe why that provision exists? Or what is the intent of that provision?
Sure, through the acting mayor to Councillor Beauregard, I think that this was a way that we could sort of extend our bylaw and enforcement authority to bring in regional staff on an enforcement type basis. So this specifically refers to displacing residents because of an order issued on behalf of the city. I'm going to use a different example. I remember when the fire was at King Street I went to the facility that day. I walked through the facility. It was as described. Like, I mean, words can't tell you, but those folks were displaced that day and needed to be housed. And that's a time that we brought the region in. We brought a transit bus in, and then we worked with Red Cross and Community Services. I think Red Cross was there to find housing. I think we were trying to make a tool there, but based on the delegation from Ms. Clark-Lafleur, I'm going to caucus with staff and legal maybe and see if there's a better way to write this section. So what you see before you on the 28th might in fact be different than what you see today, or I'll bring an explanation if it's meant to stay that way. So if we can all take that offline and bring it back to the next meeting. I'm seeing nodding from Christine.
A second comment. So we're going to, the region is going to be responsible for the issuance of licensing and regulation. Am I correct in that?
Sorry, through your worship, through the acting mayor, they are not. The region has advised us that in much the same way that they couldn't take regional transit 2 or 3 or 4 years ago when they started that initiative, it's a lower tier responsibility and they can't act. Now they do license some activities, adult entertainment, taxis, wrecking yards, tow trucks might be provincial now. There's a handful of things that are licensed at the region. My idea, and I propose this in the staff report, is even if it requires a triple majority, the same as transit required to upload, the best time to start is now. Like let's band together as lower tier municipalities and take them, take that policy issue forward. In the absence of success, if the region won't do it and if the other municipalities won't band together with us, we will issue licenses through our clerk's department. We will enforce through our enforcement officers, who are chief building official and inspectors, fire and fire prevention officer, bylaw enforcement officers, and then we think we can bring the region in, regional community services that is, under our wing, if even though it's our license, if that makes sense. But our preference is to get something in place right away, and then to work through policy channels to get the region to take it away from us, pass their own bylaw, and repeal our bylaw. The authority and power of the region, and again, I say this not to shirk our responsibility, but the municipality's expertise is, roads, bridges, sidewalks, trees. We have bylaw enforcement, but it's very much property standards and lot maintenance based, zoning infractions and so on. The region has a community services department, staff, and I think the social determinants of health committee that we have, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, believe that agency is better equipped to deal with what's really a sensitive part of the population.
Okay.
But so far they've not acted.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, I guess no doubt this regulation needs to come into effect at some point in time. If we are the ones that are enforcing it and are the ones who are in charge of the licensing, we also got to consider that we're also planning on taking the initiative with licensing short-term rentals, right? This is going to be happening concurrently, and that's going to add pressures on staff to issue the license and to constantly enforce and inspections, let's say. So I'm just wondering, should we expect more hiring of more staff in the future in order to do this? Or are we going to expect potential contracting out of services? Just wondering what kind of maybe financial concerns or financial impacts from this we can expect if the city is on the hook for this.
That's a great question and a fair question, and I appreciate it, and I sort of have a half smile on my face because this isn't a joking matter, this is a serious matter, but I would tend to think, and I say this not to be dismissive, I tend to think the revenue for additional staff is going to come on the short-term rental staff, where we think there's about 300 operators making about $2 million a month in the summertime, and we know there's one operator in the lodging house business, unless it's a very expensive license, it's not going to be enough to add new staff without to be revenue neutral. I also hope that the time commitment of the actual issuing of the licenses is small, even though we know that the enforcement time is probably going to be where the bulk of the work comes in for the city. But you are correct that they're both happening at the same time, sort of in Port Colborne's history. But I tend to think that there's a cost center, revenue center around short-term rentals that will be self-sustaining, and this work will be picked up in the day-to-day work of the licensing issuer on the second floor and the enforcement officers that work on the second floor, as well as at the fire hall in the case of bylaw. But I appreciate the question. So the short answer is revenue neutral for short-term rentals, picked up in the existing budget of staff for lodging homes.
Okay. And through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bayou brought up a good point about lodging houses and essentially the definition of what a lodging house is. And I think of a personal example for me when I was in school in Georgian College at one point, where I rented a bedroom and had common facilities that I shared with the other tenants. And based on this definition, it seems like that would fall under the definition of a lodging house here, even though that would not be the intent of this.
So, yes, through your worship to Councillor Beauregard, I lived in the same thing, but I think it was before you were born when I was at university. So when we call it the name, the nomenclature is important to some. We had various generations of this bylaw. I think the term supportive living is popular and common, but we didn't want to say supportive living. It was rooming, boarding, and lodging at one point, but we've narrowed it down to lodging. It's meant, and the definitions are here before me, but I don't want to do two things at once. A building or portion thereof in which lodgers are lodged for hire, but does not include a hotel, bed and breakfast, tourist establishment, or short-term rental unit, does not include a hospital or provincially regulated long-term care home, retirement home, nursing home, group home, or similar facility. We know there is some care being provided here, but it's not formal medical care like a nursing home would be. But we want to exclude a place where 3 students have 3 bedrooms and shared kitchens. So I'm going to take that back to planning, unless Ms. Hanson has an answer today, and make sure that we're distinguishing between the 2 types of uses.
Through Deputy Mayor to Councillor Beauregard, and commenting on what the CAO has commented on previously, is that when you are a student, you are renting a apartment unit, then you are under the Landlord-Tenant Act renting a facility. These lodgers are lodging in a facility which they do not have the same status as a rentor. So there's a distinguishing factor between living in a lodging home, basically a group home, and renting a property. So there's a legality there with regards to one and the other. So as a student, you're renting a room. These are not renting a room, they're living in a facility.
Yes, through Deputy Mayor, I believe you. I have a hard time understanding the intricacies and whether or not maybe there needs to be something like if you're not covered under the Residential Tenancies Act or something like that. I don't know if that's necessary, but just reading the definitions here, like lodger means an individual who has a right to occupy a private room in a lodging house and has access to all common areas of the lodging house pursuant to a lodging agreement. Sorry. Like they sound very similar to what would be a rental, and so like a lodging agreement. Lodging house means a building or portion thereof in which lodgers are lodged for hire. I'm not sure what that means, but does not include a hotel, bed and breakfast, or establishment, or short-term rental unit, a hospital, or provincially regulated long-term care home, retirement home, nursing home, group home, or similar facility. That doesn't seem to specifically refer to any sort of residential tenancy or like a situation there. So I'm just not sure if I understand how it's excluding those. But if we could provide confirmation or provide some kind of details on that, that'd be great.
So, yeah, through the acting mayor to Councilor Beauregard, I'll get some confirmation for that for the May 28th meeting. Like I said, smarter people than me looked at this. We are trying to, and I hope I'm using these words right, and I'm looking to sort of to the gallery. We're trying to regulate an area that's between the landlord and tenant board and a nursing home, like an official, government licensed, regulated nursing home where you're comfortable paying for care. There's a gray area in between, and it's, I think, where some of these operators and users fit in and is unregulated. So I'll make sure that we have some wording that shores that up, and if it ends up being a change to the definitions or an explanation of why the definitions are what they are and how it addresses the issue you brought forward, we'll have that for the May 28th meeting.
Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Richard. One question that I'm not quite clear on. Most of our bylaws are often complaint driven. And then there's also inspections usually as part of a license. Can you describe how an infraction could be brought to your attention, or will it get picked up on a licensing inspection?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, both. So we would pick them up on inspection with issues that are outstanding when we go and do an inspection, depending on how it's written, every year, every 2 years, depending on the situation and circumstances. We also have the ability for individuals to register a complaint, which we would then go in and review the area. So as an officer, I can't go into your home without being invited, but we can go into the facility of the lodging home in the common areas because it's just basically like a store or a business. So we can go into those areas, but you can't go into a private bedroom without being invited in. So the bedroom portion, like for lack of a better term, is their dwelling area, but the rest of the area is common for us to go take a look at, which we then can do all those other types of inspections.
Just as a follow-up to that, so does inspection have to be announced, the frequency, or are you allowed to go and just inspect?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bruno, we have written it so that we can go and inspect, and just like we can go on to a property where we think that there is going to be there is an infraction or a potential infraction, I can go into your backyard right now and go look to make sure that that infraction is not occurring. We can do the same thing at this location.
Just lastly, can a third party, family member, one of these folks that get in and find out things, does it have to be someone resident there that can complain, or can an advocate or someone else lodge a complaint?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bruno, all complaints you can register through our website. You have to provide your name, address, and phone number. You do not have to be a resident of Port Colborne. You don't have to be the individual living at that particular address or area. The only thing that is if I'm going into an apartment or unit or a dwelling, I need the owner of that unit to let us in to that house. So if I go to your dwelling, you have to let me into your dwelling. And if you don't want me in, I can't go into a dwelling, but I can go into if I go into the business, I can go into a business and do an inspection there.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we're done there. So the recommendation again.
Sorry, through you, Ms. Deputy Mayor. Do we need to move this to a later date based on the comments from the CAO?
Just a recommendation.
Is there, okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay. All right. So the recommendation of this report is as follows: that the Chief Administrative Office Report 2024-63 be received, and that the Chief Administrative Officer be directed to submit the lodging house licensing bylaw attached in draft hereto as Appendix A at the next regular council meeting for approval, and that the clerk be directed to contact all Niagara Region municipalities to request that each municipality pass a similar bylaw, and that the clerk be directed to request that the Region of Niagara assume the responsibility for regulating lodging houses in Niagara and that the councils of each municipality in the Niagara region request the same of the region of the Niagara, and that the clerk be directed to submit an amending bylaw to bylaw 4323/159/02, being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern lodging houses and the keepers of lodging houses, and to revoke any such licenses, to change the name to being a bylaw to license, regulate, and govern bed and breakfast establishments, and to effect administrative changes related thereto at the next regular council meeting for approval. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Point of order.
Go ahead.
Through Deputy Mayor, just a point of order to ask questions to the motion. Okay, so through Deputy Mayor to the CAO, when will the bylaw be circulated to the other municipalities in the region?
Through the acting mayor to Councillor Beauregard is a good question, because as Councillor Danch was reading the recommendation, I realized that obviously there's an order of operations that has to occur. For the clerk to circulate it to other municipalities, it will have to be after the meeting at which we pass the bylaw, in case we pass the bylaw with changes. So let's get this back before council, do the approval, and then after that time, we'll do the circulation to the other municipalities in Niagara. My plan for now, partly because we don't have a first meeting in June, we only have one meeting the fourth Tuesday of June, is to get this back before you on May 28th with a staff report that explains the three questions or so that we've had outstanding, as well as gives you a clean, revised copy if there are any revisions of the bylaw. And as mentioned, we did have a phone conversation with the operator of our only lodging house in the city. And the idea on that call was that that person would submit some suggestions of their own. I think staff's going to have to go through with this. This person did ask that the bylaw not be passed until their suggestions are considered, but it's not being passed tonight. The staff report's being approved, but the bylaw's being held till May 28th. If at that time council says we need another meeting, it would have to be June 25th, I believe, is the council meeting. 13th, sorry, is it the 25th? 25th. But we want to get it on the 28th. So if I can get staff to work on everything that council talked about today, we'll be back here in 2 weeks.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, so we can just pass this?
Approve the staff report, but the bylaw comes back the 28th.
Okay. That's all.
Okay, you good with that? All in favor? Right, you did that? Okay, there we go. So the motion's carried. Okay. You guys want to head out? There you go. Okay, we've got to get myself back on track here. We're going to go to presentations, and at this time there are no presentations, and delegations, there are no delegations. But we get down to the mayor's report. With the announcement today of the plant coming to Port Colborne, we have a video that Diane is going to show us here. If you want to light it up, and we can all have a look, please.
Good evening, everyone. Today we announce an historic investment in Port Colborne and Niagara. While I'm not able to attend council in person this evening, I couldn't let this day go by without a few heartfelt words to the project team, city staff, and partners who helped bring this significant investment to fruition. Earlier today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Premier Doug Ford joined me with several other special guests and dignitaries to announce a significant foreign direct investment that will contribute tremendously to Port Colborne's economic prosperity and future. Beginning last summer, a task force made of staff from the City of Port Colborne and Niagara region worked closely with Invest Ontario, Invest in Canada, the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation, and the BMI Group, along with other private sector companies, to bring this exciting investment to Port Colborne. I'm so thrilled to share that Asai Kasei will make its new Canadian home in Port Colborne. It aims to establish itself as North America's premier EV battery separator provider and to secure the top position as North America's #1 choice for lithium-ion battery separators by 2027. Asai Kasei is a Japanese company who create products and technologies for everyday life. They have product lines for the home, office, hospital, outdoors, automotive, and more. Saran wrap, cling film, and many electronic parts used in computers and smartphones are manufactured by Sai Kasei. Established more than 100 years ago, the company has diversified and consistently grown by proactively transforming to meet the evolving needs of the time. This has required significant collaboration and cooperation of all levels of government, and I sincerely thank every person who has contributed to this project and helped bring Sai Kasei to Port Colborne. I want to personally thank a few people on our team. First to Scott Louie, our CAO, for joining me as a leader in this charge. To our Chief Planner, Denise Landry, and her team, our Building Department, Matthew Bowlby and Gary Graziani, Public Works Director, Steve Shapowski and his team, Joe Calacerdo and Matt Pilon, Director Brian Bowles and his team in Finance, Manager of Special Projects, Gary Long, and Economic Development Officer, Bram Cotton. To Paul Ferris, who has been my personal advisor and has been an incredible catalyst in securing this investment and helping us communicate effectively with the Sai Kasei in Japan. You have been immensely helpful, and we are so grateful. To the BMI Group, a real estate infrastructure and business development company who are invested in building better communities, thank you for your partnership on this project. BMI has helped immensely by bringing in other private entities to help bring this project to life. Justice, Paul and John Veldman, Gurinder Gurn, and Jason Collins, and your whole team, thank you. To our partners at the federal and provincial levels, thank you for working with us and for making contributions to help realize this project. The Honourable Francois Philippe Champagne, Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry of Canada, and the Honourable Vic Fedeli, Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade of Ontario. Thank you for your persistence and commitment to this project. Special thank you to MP Vance Badaway and MPP Sam Oosterhoff for being such an incredible bridge between all three levels of government. And finally, a sincere thank you to the Sai Kasei team, especially Sam Mills and Prasad Padagunta for the many meetings we've had together. We have met many Sai Kasei representatives that have been back and forth between Canada and Japan, and it's been so great to build relationships that I know will last a lifetime. A sincere thank you to Koshiro Kudo, President and Representative Director, who joined us this morning from Japan. Please join me in congratulating everyone who has participated in helping to bring Sai Kasei to Port Colborne. We thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so moving along, we've got no regional councillor here tonight, so forget about that one. And staff remarks, anything from staff today? I got Mr. Shifowski there.
Yes, good evening, Council. So firstly, we wanted to let Council know that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has informed us that there's been multiple cases of hemlock woolly adelgid, and they've been identified within Port Colborne in a few locations. It's an aphid-like insect that attacks and kills hemlock trees and can be identified by its cotton ball-like egg sacs within the tree's needles. City staff have been participating in a Canadian Food Inspection Agency subcommittee on the topic, and will keep Council and the public up to date on the matter. Separately, our infrastructure team has kicked off this year's sewer lining program. While the rehabilitation program is underway, staff are also completing smoke testing within the sanitary sewers to identify sources of inflow and infiltration in priority areas. Although there won't be any direct impacts to the residents, we will still be putting notifications in to let people know what we're doing and why we're out in the streets. Next, we want to let Council know that the washroom building at Lockview Park will be removed next week as part of Council's plan to build a new park build-out in Lockview. And finally, H.H. Knowles Park Splash Pad has passed its annual certification, and it will be open and ready for use this weekend. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephen. Nobody else down front? Mr. Louie?
Sure. Through the acting mayor to council, my comment is also about the announcement that was held today. I know the mayor did a good job of thanking everyone and describing the announcement. You know, without any kind of hyperbole, this is a monumental announcement. The actual magnitude of the investment and the number of people that it's going to employ directly at the site as well as spin-off sites is going to be, I think, life-changing or game-changing was the word that was used today for Port Colborne. But I want to point out, a lot of people worked on this and it didn't happen quite by accident. This was a partnership of city, region, provincial, and federal employees as well as elected officials. We heard a lot about the elected officials today, but we didn't hear very much about the people behind the scenes doing the work. And again, it didn't come across our desk on Friday. I'm looking at a calendar invite. We've had a weekly meeting for about 36 weeks. That's almost 3/4 of a year. Our staff have been working on this, whether it's the planning components, the engineering components, and servicing, the financial implications of them coming here, traffic, and so on, and planning, engineering. Great work being done by both building official, fire chief, great work done by both of them. But something has proven to be true. Economic development, strategic initiatives, great work. Something has been proven to be true that we say around City Hall. We have one economic development officer on our org chart, that's Bram Cotton, but truly everyone is an economic development officer. If you're picking up garbage at the end of a fire lane that's been illegally dumped, if you're putting a book on a shelf at the library, you're an economic development officer. Painting lines, clerking meetings. I mean, it's not pleasant, but sending out tax bills and water bills. Every single person who works here is an economic development officer. We were under a non-disclosure agreement and very few employees were allowed to be aware of what was going on for 36 weeks. But the planting, we took delegates from international delegates all over the city. And it wasn't just the site that they're going to be on. It wasn't just the place that they can build. It was the after hours, entertainment in Port Colborne. It was the recreation facilities. It was the marina, the beach, and the arena. Driving down West Street, grocery stores and restaurants. The proponents of this company wanted to see where their workers, who will be hired from our local community and beyond, will live. And that's a testament to everybody who works here. Bylaw officer making sure properties are clean, planners who are planning the subdivisions and neighborhoods, building officials who are inspecting new construction. Every single city worker is an economic development officer, and it proved true in this case. So I'd like to commend staff, both those that were part of the non-disclosure agreement and actively working, and those who were working behind the scenes to show Port Colborne off. The mayor is fond of a saying that when company's coming, you clean the house. And our house was always clean when people came to visit. I can answer questions if there are any, as long as they're not covered by the non-disclosure agreement.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Mr. Louie. Councilor remarks. I guess we'll start on my right, and we'll go Mr. Beauregard.
Through you, Deputy Mayor. I had the pleasure of attending the Ontario Good Roads Association conference that was held on, I had it this year, I believe it was April 21st to the 24th with Director Shapowski, the CAO, the Mayor, Gary Long as well, and being able to, didn't go to as many plenaries as I would anticipate, but we were doing more business-oriented activities, working the initiatives of Port Colborne, in particular into the project that was announced today. So we went and met with several members and advocated for some future projects in Port Colborne as well. So it was very beneficial. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bagu.
I'm good, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thanks.
Mr. Bruno.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Mayor. I think both Mr. Louie and Mayor Steele thanked a lot of people, but I think I hadn't seen anybody thank the mayor. And so for the great job that he's done through these 36 months, I'd like to thank him. I also like to thank, 36 weeks, thank you, 36 weeks, yes. I'd also like to thank I think the citizens of Port Colborne. knowing that we've been a pretty aggressive council in terms of development and forging things forward. And that only comes when you have the direct support of the city. I'm sure like any project, this may have some detractors, but at the end of the day, I think the effort was well worth what our financial costs were, and I'm just pleased that we did it. And I said this before, but we know from the company that the ability to have kept this under wraps was also a major factor in them coming here or conversely rejecting others. And I think that takes a great deal of commitment and passion and love for this city, that you could have 36 weeks of keeping this a pretty good secret out there. And I know it boded well. And to that, there's lots of thanks to go around, including, I'm sure, members of the community and press that knew about this, but kept it under wraps as we were obliged to do so. Just a thank you to those who aren't normally thanked. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Appreciate that. Councillor Bruno. Councillor Hoyle.
Through the Deputy Mayor, I just want to thank everyone and staff for all the stuff they do for me. All my stuff is usually taken care of right away, so I'm not complaining. So also thanks for all this great news today. It's a long coming thing for Port Colborne to finally have something back, something new, and something to grow on. Last thing is, if I don't say this, I'll probably get in trouble. So the Port Colborne Wainfleet Chamber of Commerce has the Tickle Your Ribs event. They're having ribs at the Whiskey Run, and that is June 14th. So you can still get your tickets by going online. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bodner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. A couple of things, just to the CAO. A whole bunch of people have asked me where this is going to be located. Are we okay with that? There's been so many secrets, I'm afraid to say anything.
Yeah,
So.
through your worship to Councillor Bonner, I think it's public knowledge that I saw a news crew broadcasting or filming some footage there today. This is privately owned land. A company owns this land, and the company has sold or is in the process of selling it to the eventual owner, and it is former Nyan land at the sort of rail tracks up the 140, close to Forks, or sorry, beyond Forks Road, Kleinsmith Road area. My understanding is that it was owned by Nyan, and it's now owned by a new company that's separate and apart from Nyan. They acquired it, and they've sold a portion of it, not all of it, to Asahi Kasei.
Thank you. One more thing, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Sherry, I guess, in bylaw. Monique and I had a couple of calls on the Conservation Club shooting this past Sunday, which was Mother's Day, and a couple of people thought that somehow Mother's Day was exempt from the shooting. Can you clarify if it was or it wasn't?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Bodner, Mother's Day is not an exempt day. It is 2 Sundays per month, and except for statutory holidays. So if there's a statutory holiday on a Sunday, they would not be allowed to shoot on that day. There could be the potential of bringing your mother out to the shoot on at the Conservation Club. So Sunday is not an exempt day. They can shoot on Sunday, Mother's Day.
Great, thanks for that clarification. That's it.
Okay, thank you so much. So we'll now proceed with item 8.5, property acquisition, 725 King Street. Item numbers 2024-103, moved by Councillor Hoyle, seconded by Councillor Bagu. Was lifted by Councillor Hoyle. So if you'd like to speak on the item, please do so.
Yes, I had a few questions, and I just wanted to make sure on this. When if this proposal goes through, how will we address the residents that are currently living in that area? And the second question is, do we have a firm understanding that this property would be used for actual affordable housing versus all the other housing names we get, like attainable or whatever other name they want to put it, but this will be directly for affordable? Thank you.
I think Mr. Long can help us out with that one. If you want to go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hoyle. So just on the tenancy part, so the city intends to keep the residential tenancies in place at 725 King Street. It's currently a triplex. So there are 3 active tenancies there. The city will enter into new lease agreements with those 3 tenants based on the terms that they have now with the current property owner. Their current rent plus utilities every month. The lease, like any lease, includes notice periods as to when the landlord has to give adequate notice, what those timelines are, if something changes with the tenancy or the lease has to be terminated. It is staff's intention to be open with the tenants about future plans for the property, to give them some line of sight. I think it's very unlikely that anything will happen with the property or with the house this calendar year. So we want to be upfront about the city's plans and continue to keep them informed that as we see funding coming together for this project, well, then I think we need to look ahead to the property, the house, and having the tenants removed so that the property can be demolished to support the development vision that we have.
So just to follow up with that, are we going to be assisting those residents once we know what's going to happen with that property and once the shovels go in the ground to find another place to go?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the councillor. I think we can offer some assistance. I think it's most important that we communicate with the tenants as to what the city's plans are for the 3 properties and to give them lots of time, lots of notice so that they can plan accordingly.
No further question.
Okay, thanks. Some more, Gary?
Sorry, I think there was a question just on the affordability part.
Yeah,
maybe
sorry.
if the councillor could just ask the question.
Yeah, the question was just, do we have for sure agreement that this will be actually focused on affordable housing?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to Councillor Hoyle. So in the fall of 2022, there was a memorandum of understanding that was approved by the council of the day. That MOU, which is a non-binding MOU, was also approved by the Board of Directors for the Niagara Regional Housing Organization. That MOU said a lot of things, but up front it stipulated and was very clear that the city and Niagara Regional Housing would work together for the purposes of developing land for an affordable housing project. So that was very clear in the MOU. I think it was council's intention. The council of the day made it clear that this was going to be an affordable housing project with affordable housing units. I think to help the affordability piece, once 725 King has been acquired by the city, there are 3 parcels. 2 are owned by the city, 1 is owned by Niagara Regional Housing. Both entities will contribute their parcels of land to the greater good, for $1. So that will help to keep the units affordable. I can also say that city staff and Niagara Regional staff are really encouraged by the federal and provincial funding programs that have been announced in the last couple of months that are geared towards supporting or providing funding to support housing and housing-related infrastructure, especially for affordable housing units. So we're optimistic about our ability to secure funds for this project. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Bruno, did you have something to say there? No, okay. Councillor Bagu.
Nothing to say, holy cow. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Through you to Gary, the triplex, 3 apartments, how many actually people are living in this building? Do we know that?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the councillor, I believe there are 2 couples and 1 individual. So I believe there's a total of 5 residents.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, the only reason I'm asking is if this does pass, that the rent they're paying is affordable housing, and I think it's we're going to kick them out to tear that building down. We and Niagara Regional Housing should help them find alternate housing also if they can't find it on their own. I will feel bad evicting 5 people because we're going to tear your house down and they can't find another apartment for $622 a month plus utilities, or $1,000 or $1,100. So I do expect us in the region to help them find something. So I hope you can pass that along. And one other thing here. Oh, the other thing. As landlord of this property, do we call Director Steve to go cut the grass, his workers, and we call our city plumber or city electrician to adjust things? Do we call our professional firefighters to go change the batteries in the smoke detectors? Who takes care of the maintenance of this residence now?
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the councillor. I think to your question, councillor, you're right. As of this Friday, once the city has ownership of the property, it becomes a city asset, which will require some maintenance, snow removal, grass cutting, and so on. And we can certainly work with our colleagues to make sure that that happens. I think, to be clear, the city's objective here is not to become a long-term landlord of this property. The plan is to acquire the property and consolidate it with 2 other properties for the purposes of creating a new affordable housing building that will have likely somewhere between 50 and 60 units. So that's the vision, that's the plan, and I can tell you that city staff and Niagara Regional staff want to make that project a reality sooner rather than later. I don't think anything is going to happen in 2024. Realistically speaking, nothing's going to happen till likely sometime in 2025. I do appreciate your comments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. One more thing, Mr. Deputy Mayor. If this does pass, can we have an inspection of that whole complex to make sure it is safe for the residents that are living in there? Like, I'd feel pretty bad if we bought it on Friday, Monday something happened, and it was because neglect on the city's part because we technically own it. So I feel a lot better if we had inspection by everybody, including the fire department, to make sure it's safe. As owners of this building, like I said, I feel a lot better.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the councillor, we will take that under advisement. I think it's a good idea. I also want to provide assurances to council that as part of the agreement of purchase and sale, we included conditions around due diligence. There has been a couple of environmental assessments that have been completed. So, but I think we will. That's good, and we will definitely do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bagu. Councillor Beauregard.
Through Deputy Mayor to Mr. Long. By being landlords, then we have the responsibility under the Residential Tenancy Act, that of a landlord. I'm just wondering if staff is aware of those responsibilities and are going to be proactive in how they understand it and how we go about the process.
Through you, Deputy Mayor, to the councillor, I think it's a fair point. The city has leases with some other individuals and companies where the city is the landlord and we are managing relationships and overseeing leases for, I can think of at least one residential property as well as one commercial property. So we have some experience with this, but I think it's a fair point, and it's as long as the city is the landlord and owner of the property, it's a relationship, it's a business arrangement that staff will take very seriously, and we want to ensure that we follow the provisions of the lease agreement and treat the tenants with respect and give them lots of notice as to what the city's plans are.
Just to follow up on that, there's also situations where the owner of the property isn't necessarily the landlord. You have like a property maintenance company, not necessarily maintenance, but management company, which then would technically be a landlord and kind of could provide some kind of buffer in terms of legalities and the other thing, because then they're fall under the landlord responsibilities. So it just may be something that staff can look into to provide some protections for the municipality. That's all.
Okay, appreciate that. So the recommendation of this report is follows: that the Chief Administrative Officer Report 2024-103 be received, and that the council approve a bylaw to authorize entering into an agreement with purchase and sale with Francis Matthias, Robert Prune, and Henrietta Prune in the amount of $405,000 regarding the acquisition of 725 King Street, and that council authorize the mayor and the acting city clerk to sign the bylaw and any other documentation related to the transaction. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? No, so the motion is carried. We did that one, so we're gonna move to item 8.8. We'll begin with item 8.8, noise variance, Shirkston Shores, 490 Empire Road, 2024-109. Mover, Councillor Hoyle. Seconder, Councillor Bagu. Councillor Hoyle.
Through the Deputy Mayor, I just want to concur with staff's recommendations that I also recommend option 2. It's a more suitable approach for addressing the noise variance, especially considering the resort's possible impact to nearby neighbors. I guess it was more of a comment.
Anybody else want to speak on the item? All right. So I guess we'll start there. Start there. Okay. So the recommendation of this report is as follows: that Community Safety and Enforcement Department Report 2024-109 be received, and that the Community Safety and Enforcement Services recommend that council grant a permit to exempt the Shirkston Shores from Section 4, Paragraph 3 of Bylaw 4588/119/04 with the following terms and condition: that the noise variance be approved for the period starting from May 1st, 2024 to 12:01 p.m. to 11 p.m. for the variety of amplified noise, including noise from DJs with equipment and live bands being able to amplify music. The permit is applicable only to the production, reproduction, and amplification of sound in connection with these events listed in the application. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, the motion is carried. Thank you. So there's no motions this evening. Are there any notices of motions? So minutes of boards and committees. There are 3 sets of minutes from boards and committees to receive this evening. 19.1, 19.2, and 19.3. that the minutes of boards and committees be received. If any counselor has a question about these minutes, please raise your hand now. Thank you. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. There you go. Thank you again. No one's opposed. The motion is carried and defeated. The motion is carried, sorry. Bylaws. Items 20.1 through 20.5 contains bylaws to enact and pass. Mover, Councillor Bagu, seconded by Councillor Hoyle. If there's any questions about these bylaws, please raise your hand now. Are you doing that?
Sorry, I just want to confirm that I don't have a conflict on any of these bylaws. There's no bylaw for the noise, is there?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Okay. All right. Okay, did we read this part? That the remainder of the bylaws that have not been pulled for separate discussion be enacted and passed as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. No one's opposed. The motion is carried. Procedural motions. And just one last informational item I was handed here. I could have turned this on to Sherry, but I'm going to save you from getting up. We've got our cleanup day again this year. Saturday, May 25th from 9 till 12. It's at 235 Welland Street near the Clarence Street Bridge. Like in the past years, once the skips are full, the event is over. I'm pretty sure you can go on our city website and get all the information as far as what's available to throw away. I like a nice clean city, so let's everybody chip in and do what they can. There are no procedural motions or information items this evening, so we will move for adjournment. Thank you for attending council tonight. The meeting is now adjourned.